poppin'? Welcome to a web-only edition of Real Ones. I am Logan Murdoch. That is Howard Beck. We are here to talk about the New York Knicks, who have had great success during this season and also some disappointing moments. But it seems like this team, there's a great team within this team, but injuries have undermined all of their promise. Do you think that will affect what they should have been going into this postseason, Howard? Because I feel like there was a lot of early buzz with Jalen Brunson doing what he does, with when they're whole, with Julius Randle and OG Anunoby. This team seems like a formidable, sneaky, really good team. But I feel like injuries are undermining that promise, Howard.
I mean, that's really the story of their season, right? Like the trade for OG Anunoby looked absolutely brilliant when he was playing, but he's been, out more than he's been available. This team is 15-2 as of this recording when Anunoby plays, and we don't know if he's going to play again. And they've of course been missing Julius Randle for much of the season, or at least much of the second half of the season. Like, he's their number 2 scorer. He's a guy who's been a multiple-time All-NBA player. Like, you cannot lose a guy who puts up 24 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists a game and not miss that. And yet, to their credit, because they play really tough, they play relentless defense, Jalen Brunson just keeps smashing expectations. Even when you set the bar higher, he jumps over that. So to their credit, they have still been viable and have gotten through. Like a lot of other teams, if you lose 2 players of that caliber, not to mention Mitchell Robinson for much of the season, like you probably would have sunk much further by now. So it's to their credit that they are still in the thick of things in the East and still feel like a viable playoff team. But you just, as we record this, again, we don't know what Julius Randle's status will be for the playoffs. We don't know whether Anunoby is available. And I just don't think you can get very far without 2 players of that caliber, no matter how much we could admire what they've done without them. At a certain point, the talent deficit, because of the injuries, might ultimately define how we see the season.
This has been the year of Jalen Brunson. He's had the 61-point game, even though Wembanyama was hating and beat him, and that was in an L. But that is, to your point about how good he has been and what he has been as a franchise leader. What is the ceiling on his greatness at this point? And what can the Knicks do to round out that roster around him? And what do you think the roster construction is for this Knicks team going forward? Because they have a really good base with this guy, Jalen Brunson, who I don't think anyone saw this when he was coming out of Villanova. What can the Knicks do to surround him with the talent that his talent suggests that he needs to have around him?
I mean, nobody saw this when the Knicks signed him for what was then considered a potential overpay, which now looks like a drastic underpay. So he's been incredible. I think my concern now is that they've put too much on him, and not by choice, obviously. It's the injuries. But, how far do you get in the playoffs if teams are now targeting Brunson, right? Your entire defense, you scheme in the playoffs in a way that you don't in the regular season, right? Your entire defense is going to be about cutting off the head of the snake in Jalen Brunson. And how much offensive creation do they have when a team is able to bottle him up? And he's not that easily bottled up, to be clear. His footwork, his physicality, the way, like, he's not, he doesn't strike you as the fastest or most athletic, most explosive guy in the league at his position. And yet the guy just lives in the paint and, draws a lot of free throws, generates a ton of offense. But teams are going to look to shut that down. And so then it's like, well, how much are you getting out of Deuce McBride and Dante DiVincenzo, right? Like, where's your scoring coming from? So that's the near-term concern. The longer term, the offseason, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this, mostly because, Logan, I feel like as long as they re-sign OG Anunoby, like, you can argue that they're set. Like, I don't know what the ceiling on that team is, but you kind of want to see it before you start saying, oh, it's time to spin off Randall for Karl Anthony Towns or something. They've got quite a bit to to rest on now. Like they've got a really solid core. They've got shot creation. They've got defense. They've got size. Isaiah Hartenstein has had a phenomenal season as well. Like they're in really good shape, and they've still got all those picks of their own and a few others to work with if they need to fortify. But I don't feel like this is a team that needs to make dramatic moves because of how high Brunson has climbed in the NBA pecking order, right? Like the guy's an all-NBA guard now, at minimum. I think he'll probably end up on some MVP ballots, down ballot the fourth or fifth slots. But I don't think this is a team that's going out looking to make, like, they're no longer in the Donovan Mitchell market, right? I don't know who else is available this summer, but I don't think this is a team that needs to swing for the fences, but I think they'll do so if the opportunity is there to get a guy that fits with Jalen Brunson.
One of the figures that I've been impressed with watching the Knicks has been the renaissance of Tom Thibodeau, right? Who has always been this guy with the Bulls. This is the guy that plays a lot of guys big minutes. He's back in the spotlight. He is back with a really good team. What do you think What do you think of his performance over the last couple of years in guiding this team back into legitimate postseason success over the last few years?
I mean, I actually do think he's rehabbed his reputation quite a bit, because for all the accolades that he deservedly got in Chicago, his next stop is Minnesota, where he's doing that whole ill-fated president-coach or GM-coach hybrid job that never works out well unless your name is Greg Popovich. And they didn't win. And he's known for defense, and they weren't good defensively for most of his time there, with the exception of the short time that they had Jimmy Butler. So Tibbs being able to kind of instill a very recognizable toughness in the Knicks, making them a Knicks team that New Yorkers are proud of again, that reminds them of those great 90s teams, is a huge accomplishment. Because I don't know that when Tibbs arrived, anybody expected this is where they'd end up. It didn't seem like they had the goods to get here. And granted, they've made a ton of changes. Almost the entire roster, I think, has changed over since he arrived. But yeah, I think Tibbs has done a lot to reestablish himself as one of the better coaches in this league. He won a Coach of the Year award, obviously, during his time in New York. And they have at times, I think, arguably overachieved based on their personnel. He's gotten the best out of everybody. And if the one concern has always been, is he going to wear guys out, whether physically or mentally? Because that's been the reputation. Guys eventually just tire of him. It doesn't seem to have happened with this group. So I don't think that's a concern at the moment.
Now it's time for the segment we've all been waiting for. Are the Knicks real or fake, Howard?
If they were at full strength, or if we knew they were going to be at full strength, again, we don't know at the time that we were having this discussion, but if we knew they were at full strength, I think I'd lean real, because even though I don't expect they can beat the Celtics to get out of the East, I do think they'd be very dangerous. But as it stands, they're not at full strength as we're having this conversation. And I just don't think that Jalen Brunson and a bunch of role guys is enough to take down Tatum and Brown, or Giannis and Dame, or to make the deep playoff run that at one point seemed like a given. So fake.
I'm going to go with fake, but I love this team. I love how tough they are. I love Jalen Brunson's game and how it's blossoming. I love the reaction of the Garden every time they do well. The Garden is back, baby. And I just love everything about what this team stands for. And I do think if they were full strength, they could make a run. At least, I don't know if they could beat the Celtics, but at least give them a great 6 or 7 game test. And so it's tough that we may not be able to see this team at full strength in the postseason. So unfortunately, I have to go fake, but it's not for my lack of love for this team.